Welcome everyone to our third session in our Christmas Quilt-A-Long. We've been working on this project and having had a few complications. Hopefully we're going to be good to go today. So this is the third session in the Christmas Quilt-A-Long, and we've been using the spinning wheels 14. Or is it the Spin Effects? I don't have it in front of me. But anyway, we're using number 14. And we have used 3 different sizes. And as you can see, this is the finished project. So I'm going to reach around here and get the one we've been working on. And here's that project. So you can see that I went ahead and secured all of my threads, pulled them to the back. That took a little bit of a time because we had one here and one here. So that was 2, and there were 8 of those. So that was 16 spots that we had to secure into place. So you can see that I don't have my edges finished, and that's what we're all about today and what we're going to be showing you. So at this point in time, what I want to do is show you how I am going to trim my edges so that I can use the back and pull it to the front. So at this point, I'm going to pull, I know I've looked at this, I'm going to use this side over here. I'm just going to well, sorry about that, I lost my camera person. So this side over here, when I put the straight edge up against it, and I'm using the Westerly designed ruler here, when I put this straight edge up against it, you can see that I have a little bit of batting here, whereas down here I have very little batting showing. So I've got some here and not any down here. And this is where this technique is really a foolproof technique, because of the fact that when we work with this, I am going to make this a straight edge, because whether we have fabric or batting underneath here, because that's going to get covered up. So for some reason when I was doing this, maybe this design pulled in a little bit more, and so that's why that's like that. So as you can see, when we're doing this, this was cut 5 inches. So 1/4 inch is off of here. And last week I had you measure 4 inches from this edge and make a line. And that's what we finished up. So right here up close, in these areas, when we turn our binding around from the back to bring it to the front, it's going to meet up right at that edge, because that's what we planned it to do. So since I don't want you to get confused, I'm going to turn this way a little bit so maybe you can see it a little bit better. I have set my ruler, and this is the ruler that you can use the screwdriver to put it where it needs to go. And I have set it at 4 3/4 inches. 4 3/4 inches. So it really doesn't matter whether you're using this kind of a ruler or a different one. It's 4 3/4 inches away. And since I have that little lip right there, you can see I can just lay that right along that crease and almost just run it right down that edge. So I've got it laid down here, and I've got it up there. So when I cut this off, when I cut the batting off, I'm going to be cutting a different amount of that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull my backing back, because I sure don't want to cut any of that off. And just a little hint, if you have troubles with that staying back and out of your way, use some, even just painter's tape or something to hold that back, so when you turn this back around, you can flip this back edge back and you're not going to be getting into that cutting area. So I'm going to take my ruler and set it right along that edge, and that's going to cut so that I have 4 3/4 inches from that seam. So you can see here I've got a little bit a little bit more, and now it's going back in the other direction. I want to check to see again that I'm not getting my backing, and I'm going to set this up so it's straight along that edge. Guess I need to bring it back just a little bit here. I'm going to stand up to do this. So I've cut that the batting off, so that is measuring 4 3/4 from this seam line. So I'm going to turn this. I'm going to repeat that process. It seems like it's been a long time since I've been with you guys. I missed you. I know many of you were eager to get this done, and I do apologize. So I'm going to line this up. Cut right along this edge. Again, it's straight, right along that edge. So for those of you that want to see it a couple more times, there are 4 sides to the quilt, so that's what I'm going to be doing. And this is where I had spray basted, so that's why I'm pulling this back. And always make sure you've got it in the back. I hate to see grown women cry. So I'm going to line this up again. Down the side here. Because we want to have a square project when we're finished, whether it's a placemat, of course that would be a rectangle, but whether it's a placemat or a wall hanging, a full-size quilt, we want to have a square corner. We want it to be so that it doesn't hang on the wall or lay on the table so that it looks odd. So this is my last side for this. And again, you can see right over here, this is making this straight. I'm not just following the edge of my quilt. I'm making it so it's straight. And now what I'm going to do with this, because that's all 4 sides, I'm going to lay this out. And I know that the directions in the tool, and I'm going to get that right now. This is probably a new tool for many of you. And this is the Quick Easy Mitered binding tool. This is a tool that I have designed. It is one that is very easy to use on all different sizes. And you can see a diagonal line here. And this represents the corner of your quilt. So after I do the next step, this is the tool that we will be using. So the next step is to actually cut this so that we only have 1.5 inches left around our quilt. So on this side over here, I am going to now take my ruler and push this up to 1.5 inches. And if you are doing this with another type of ruler, you could even use some type of tape or markings so that you see that same thing every time. So this is 1.5 inches at this point, and I'm laying that right on the edge. So you can see when I go to cut this off, I'm measuring from the edge that I just cut. I'll get this out of the way here. And I'm going up to the top here, and that is measuring right on that edge. 1.5 inches. So what is left is 1.5 inches of fabric from the outermost edge of the batting. I'm going to come down here and lay that on there just like that. I can always come back up here and check to make sure it's straight. And you'll notice right now, some of you can probably see that there's maybe just a little bit of a wave in that fabric because this is quilted and this is not. I will be addressing that here in just a second when we do our pressing so that you'll know how to deal with that. I guess I can't pull it all off because I haven't cut all the way up there. So there's my 1.5 inches. And you notice I just walk my hands down that edge. Anybody have any questions while I'm doing this? Or questions about last week? Okay, one more side here. Now, if you were doing this and you were going to be using a border that actually had, let's say, best way to say it would be like a flying goose block that was in the border. So let's say right here you had 1/4 inch. You don't want to flip this over. It's going to come up 3/4 inch. So what you would do would be to add 1/2 inch to your batting. In other words, cut off or not cut off that extra 1/2 inch. So you would extend that batting 1/2 inch and it would take up the difference. So when you turned it, and you'll see what I mean here in just a second. So it looks like I've got one little section down there that I got to trim off. So I'm going to use that the same way. I guess I didn't get it the first time around. Boy, I tell you, this ruler just wants to hug right up to that line. It makes it really easy. So I'm going to take those pieces and get them out of my way. And what I will be doing next, I'm going to explain it here, and then I'm going to go to the ironing board so you can see it. And I talked about this little bit of a ripple here. When we turn this up to press this, because we're going to turn this right up to that edge. And when we turn that up to press that, we don't want to start here and go this way because this will just keep distorting all the way along there. I like to do the middle first, then come down to the end, and then just kind of work it in because you can press that fabric in and it would be kind of like what you'd call easing. So when we talk about easing something in garment sewing, it's kind of the same way here. So if you find where the middle is and find a distance about 12 inches down and then work in between, you'll have no problems. Now, this is the cover of the tool. This is the Quick Easy Mitered binding tool. And I wanted to show you this because it's very clear. The instructions when you get the tool have pictures. I'm a picture person and I like to have a lot of photos. So when you purchase this tool, and of course you can go to my website, and I showed you that address last week, but it's www.sewbizmarion.com. I would prefer that you start with your local quilt store first. If they don't have it, then you can get it from us, and then you can share that information with your local quilt store. So we're going to shift right around here to the ironing board. And you'll notice that on this one, I've not pressed out my lines. Obviously, I can go ahead and press those out, but I wanted to have a couple left so I can show you how I actually planned that corner, and that's the reason that's still in there. So I'm going to take this center right here, and I'm pressing it right up to the edge of the batting. I'm not going farther because remember, I left that like that so that I would have an exact straight edge. So I've got that there in the center. We're going to come down to this end here, and I'm going to press that. And there is a difference between pressing and ironing. Pressing is an up and down motion, and that's what you're going to find is effective with trying to ease this in. So you can see now that I've done that, when I looked down here, it looked like it had a little bit extra and too much. By the way I press that, when I turn this over, it's going to be just fine. It's not going to have any extra. So I'm going to go ahead and press two sides so I can show you this technique. So we're going to come down here to this end. And then work in between there. So I'm going to come around this corner here, come to the middle, press that right up to the batting, and then I'm going to come down to this end, and you need to press clear to the corner. So I am lifting my iron up. It may look like I'm just moving it along, but I'll exaggerate it a little bit so you can see that I am lifting it up. And then we'll come to this corner. Now I'm going to lay that piece out flat. And here's a good way to test this. When this is turned, that should be even right there. It shouldn't stick out any longer. So if that piece sticks out farther, you need to go back and kind of work that in because we don't want that to just keep gathering up there. Now I'm going to do one more side so that I can show you two corners. So I'm pressing in the center, coming to the end down here, and again you can see when I put this down I want to make sure that it lays nice and flat. I did have a couple calls about having trouble getting your lines out. Even though you had used Best Press or some other starch alternative, the ones that called me, I told them just spray some more on it, and that took them right out. So if you have had that issue, then just spray some more on it. It may take a couple times of spraying, because what I'm finding is people are over marking. In other words, if I was making a mark here, they take their mark and go back and forth like 3 times. 1 time is all you need. So I'm going to stop at that side there, and then I'm going to show you how to mark for the corners. And I'm just going to get my tool and do it right here on my ironing board. So I'm going to take, you could use any marker you wanted. I'm going to take and put this corner right on the corner of my batting or backing, or batting or top, whichever one it is. It may be a combination of both. And then I'm going to make a line right across here. And then I simply pull that back, and right where that line intersects the fold that I just pressed in, I make a line across that. Those are the two critical points. This is actually a stitch line. So let's see where my other corner is I'm going to do. And I'm pulling this back, and on this you'll see this is fabric and this is batting, and that's okay because it's all going to get covered up. But you can see when I lay this down, I've got a nice square corner. If I was following my fabric, I wouldn't necessarily have it. This line helps you because if in this corner you had some sort of a half square triangle or something, you could lay that right along that line also. So this tool has been designed so that you will have just the right amount of space to stitch across there. So I'm going back and forth a couple times trying to make it heavy so that you can see it. Again, I'm putting this where this intersects the fold that I just pressed in. So that'll give us enough to start on this. So we're going to go back over here to the sewing machine. And while I'm threading up the sewing machine, let me tell you, when you're doing this type of work, you can do it with certain feet on your machine, but having the right feet for the right technique really makes a huge difference. So the first thing that I'm going to be doing, I'm actually going to be, I hope I'm not in your way here, but I'm actually going to be stitching just a straight stitch. So I'm just using, you could use your 1/4 inch foot or your regular multi-purpose foot. It really wouldn't matter. And so now that my machine is ready to go, I really only need one straight pin, because right here and right there I need to match those up. So I'm taking this and turning it so I'm looking at the back side and folding this somewhat like just a triangle there. And I'm going to put the pin through right where that intersection of lines is. Now, we'll see how smart our pin is. Did we come out exactly? Wow, that time I did. That's not usual. That's just a good day, I guess. So I'm going to show you what you would do if it didn't happen that way. You would back the pin out and put it where it needs to go, and then pull that pin completely down flat to your fabric until the head is flat, your fingers flat back here, because that means you've got them exactly lined up, and then you just back that pin out and put it into the fabric so it holds. Now, the way we're going to be stitching this is only part of it, and I'm going to get something here so I can actually show you that. I'm going to start right here in the middle. I can either go forward first and then back to my pin, or back to my pin and forward, but I need to start and stop right in the middle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set my machine to a standard straight stitch, but I can tell you when I'm doing this, rather than doing a 2.5 length, which is normal, I back it off to 2.0, because then that way I have smaller stitches there. And I'm going to set my foot down so that my needle goes right in that line. And at this point, I pull my pin back. I'm not going to sew over it, but I want to use it as my guide so I know where I'm going. I like to stitch a couple stitches forward first to set my stitches. And now I'm going back to that pin. And when I get back there, I want to release my reverse because right there's where the pin is, and I don't want to go any farther back. So if your machine has a programming or a habit of actually going another stitch back, you're going to want to stop before that pin because you don't want to go one stitch farther. And I'm going to stitch right down straight to that fold, and again I'm going to back stitch so that I end up right where I started. Now at this point I can use the cutter because I've definitely secured my threads. And I'm going to go ahead and cut that thread that's on the front and this thread that's on the back. So I'm going to then lay this in my hand and using sharp scissors, cut that off so there's 1/4 of an inch, and then just snip off that little tip right there. So what's going to happen now is I go back to the front side and I'm going to get a point turner. And I'm simply going to use my finger first and then my point turner to push that out to a nice point, and you will see that then this just lays right up to, not sure what happened there, but we had a little recess, so we're back at it now. So this is the second corner, and we're going to have this point and this point line up. So we're going to turn this over. So that we have a triangle, and right here where the intersection is, I'm putting that pin through. We'll see how smart this pin is this time. Wow, 2 times in a row. Ladies, I'm not usually that lucky. So that was exactly right, folded that way, and I'm going to turn this back. And again, our quilt is, the front's kind of here in front of us, and the raw edges are out here to the back. And I'm setting that foot down, and remember I put the stitch length to 2.0, and I'm going to stitch forward a couple of stitches, and then I'm setting my reverse, and I'm stitching back to that straight pin. One more stitch, and I'm going to take it out, and I'm going to release my reverse and come straight back forward and go back. At this point I can use my cutter, and I have only stitched the part nearest the fold. I've not stitched back here. So anything past where we pressed has not been stitched. So what I'm going to do is, again, I'm going to take my sharp scissors and I'm cutting across there and then just cutting off this little point. And I'm going to lay it back flat. And I just use my finger to push that through. And I'm going to get my point turner here and push that out. Now don't use something sharp so that you would push it right on through. So I just want that point to be nice and flat there. Now what I'm going to do so that I can set up to show you how I stitch this down is I'm just going to go to the middle of this because this corner back here in the back is not finished yet. And I'm going to take my pens. You can use Wonder Clips if you'd like, but when you put those pins in, put them in so that they are perpendicular to your edge that you're going to stitch. When you put pins in going this way, you have the chance of this moving. So this is going to go in. I'm in the middle of this, and I'm going to come down here, and I like to put them a little ways apart, and you should be able to just turn it over. I kind of pull it out and lay it back, and if everything has been done the way we planned it, because yes, I did plan it, you'll see right here that that's the spot where that design ends, and this is coming right up to that edge. So we're not covering it up. So that's going to lay nice and flat like that. And that's why I said if you had something in here that was such that it was like a flying goose, where you only had that 1/4 of an inch, you would want to add on your batting to take up that other 1/2 inch, so that when you turn this, this is now 3/4 because of course it was 1.5 inches when we began. And you'll notice I'm just taking this and working to the corner, not from the corner. And I'm pushing that back in there, getting that to lay nice and flat. And you're going to be able to press that line out, so that's not going to be an issue. So I'm going to come down here because I've got obviously another corner. I really like to work this way in front of me, not across the side vertical. I like to work right here in front of me. So you can see how I've got those pins put in there. And then you can use a regular zigzag foot, but as I was saying a while ago when I was threading the machine, I like to use those things that work with me. And I know that I could use my blind hem foot because one side is higher than the other. But fortunately, I know it fell on the floor a few minutes ago. I got to find it. I have what's called a left edge top stitch foot, which will allow me to stay in the right direction and get everything done. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pin this last couple of spots here. And then I'm going to show you how I stitch this. Now you can hand stitch this. As I always tell people when I go out and teach, I'm allergic to hand stitching, and they haven't found a pill for that yet. Oh yeah, I hand stitch when I have to, but it's not my favorite thing to do. And I can tell you that when you stitch this down, it will look a lot better if you just do a narrow zigzag. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change to this foot. And this foot is called the left edge top stitch foot. And you can see that there is a little edge right along there. And what this allows me to do is set this right along the edge here. And you can see it's just got a little flange that it just guides right along that edge. So what I will be able to do, and I'm going to go down this far here so I can show you a corner. I'm going to take one foot off and put the other one on there. And I'm going to set my foot down so there's a little red line right there. And I'm just going to set it down so that's where it lines up. Now if I just touch my foot pedal again, or my foot up and down button again, it comes up just a little bit so I can adjust it if I need to. But I've got a red line there that's right lined up. And so I'm going to select on my machine the zigzag stitch, and I'm going to adjust it so that it's stitching just on and then off just a bit, just a very, very little bit. So I'm going to set this right here, and I'm going to take one stitch, and then I'm going to take the other one so I can see, yes, that's going to work. It's just catching that edge. And you can see right down there to that spot where it's guiding. And you're going to want to get either a stylus or a skewer or something like that, and just feed this. You can see how this is flexible. That's why I have it. And I'm just going to lay that right there so it just kind of holds my fabric flat, and it helps to ease it in as I'm stitching. Now selecting the needle down will also help with that. So you can see I've just got this laid right flat there, and I'm holding that right in front. So what looked like, it's kind of like when we first did this and I talked about baggy bottoms. We're just going to be able to lay that on there, keep it nice and flat. And you'll see when I come onto this white that I am not actually stitching off of the edge. You'll be able to see there that it's just catching the edge of my green fabric. So it doesn't matter whether you have high contrast fabric or not, it's not going to show up there. When we get to the corner, we're going to stop, and I like to raise my foot up just a little bit so that I can make sure that my fabric's laying all in there. You can see that's why I'm using something to do that. I'm going to put that foot back down, and I'm going to come so that I finish all but right in that corner. And then I can flip this around and it's ready to go again, right in that same spot. Now I don't like to sew over pins, so I take all of my pins out before I get to them. And once you've made it around that corner, you're just going to be doing the same thing here. If you don't have a foot like this, you can try using your, like I said, your blind hem foot, but you would actually be working with your quilt in this area, and your edge would be over here, so there wouldn't be anything out here because that foot is actually backwards of this left edge top stitch foot. But if you have the opportunity to get a left edge top stitch foot, it's definitely a great investment. So we're almost to the middle, and I don't want to go any farther than the middle because it makes doing my corners difficult since I haven't pinned them all in. So I've only got about 3 or 4, well, actually right there. I was thinking it was about 3 inches, but it's less than that. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to turn my hand wheel and leave those threads long so that then I can secure them. But I want you to be able to see up close what this looks like. So you can see, you can hardly even tell that. It just blends right in with your fabric. Now I'll flip it over so you can see the other side. Again, it's just that zigzag on the back. I can tell you that this is a whole lot faster than doing an add-on binding. And when you plan for it, like we did here, because I knew I wanted to have a 4-inch finish, then it does not distort your border design that you've planned for. You'll notice that this is also centered because that's the way we planned it. Now I've got a couple lines here that I've got to press out. So that's how we worked with the Quick Easy Mitered binding tool. And again, this is what the instructions are like. And now what I want to show you is how to put on these little crystals. It's kind of like a magic trick here, having 2 people working in such a small area. So on this, I guess I'll turn it back this way. I've got one put on in this corner. I already pressed out the lines here, but there are still some lines here that I can press out. It won't bother that crystal. Now what I'm using is, this just applies the crystals, and this happens to be one that has an on-off button on it. And that on-off button, I've already had it on, so the tip of this is hot. Now you have different sizes of tips that come with it. So those different sizes of tips are for different types of different embellishment things. So what I'm using here today happens to be the Pink Sand Beach crystals. And on one corner, it happens to be this one, I've cut off just a little spot so that they will just kind of shake out like a shaker. And the only things that you really need to do on this is, I recommend that you kind of get yourself a little placement where you want them so that you know what you're going to do with them. Because otherwise, you get finished and then you keep adding more here and more there and whatever. And I'm just using one color on this one, and this is kind of a blue-green color. And I will tell you, when you're doing this, if you invest in the crystals that are the Swarovski crystals, They really shine a lot. Now, I have had times, I'm going to tell you how this all works, but I've had times when I've had my crystal stick into this piece. And if that happens to you, you'll notice that there's a little slot right here that I can stick a straight pin in, and then I could push that crystal off. So what you do is you take this crystal, and I've got it in my tweezers. Well, I had it in my tweezers, and I'm putting it right in that hot spot. And I know you're not going to be able to see it on the camera, but it starts bubbling. Now it's not like a bubble, 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 but you can see that the glue on that side is now melting. So I just find where I want to put it and put it in place. Now, if you don't have it exactly in place where you want it, you can move it with this piece and then set it in place. So like I wanted this one right in the center, and now that is set. These are just laying on there. This one is glued in place. Now I'll show you what I've been doing, and it's worked really well, is I put them where I want them, and then I just set this on top, and that will heat right through. So now that one's in place. Now that's not what the instructions say, but it's been working for me, and I'm sure it would work for you. So this is a lot of fun to embellish your projects, and you can see that staying right there. These are safe through the washer. You want to make sure that you do get them on there good. And so the glue that's on the bottom of this is what heats up. So I'm going to show you again and see if you can see it. How close should I put this to the camera? Because right now you can see on the bottom of that, it's just starting to bubble a little bit. That means that glue is melting. And so now when I put this down, wherever I decide for it to go, that's glued in place. So I'll show you what I did with the last one from last time. I'm just going to lay it right on top here. I put them in the corners. I didn't put more than just one, but you could put them all over, do whatever you want. This is how I did it from the last one. Now I did use two colors on this one, but on the one that I'm doing for today, I didn't think it really needed the two colors. I just loved the color that came with, or was all in that packet. So, what are your questions before I talk about some future activities?
Tell us again what the foot was and where they can find it.
The foot would be from your brand where you got your sewing machine. It's pretty much brand specific. You're not going to be able to just pick any one up and put it on your machine. Ours is called the left edge top stitch foot, is what the name of it is. It's backwards from your blind hem foot. So let me just show you. If I was sitting at the sewing machine and I'm using my blind hem foot, I would be on this side. All of this part of my top would be in the arm of the machine. So you can do it. It's not hard. It's just using your blind stitch foot, because your blind stitch foot is high on the left side and low on the right side, and you're just going to line up that zigzag so that you can then do this edge like that.
And Lori's really excited. She's never used the crystal, so she's excited that she gets to use that on these.
Okay, well that's great, because I can tell you that some of the embellishment with this stuff, I mean, most people don't think of putting some of these crystals with their quilts, but it really does add a lot. So next, what I want to tell you about is the next Quilt-A-Long. And since I didn't have a slide on it, I made a little paper here. So the next Quilt-A-Long is going to be Wednesday, August 26th, and also Wednesday, September the 5th. And what we're going to be doing there is, if you don't have a circle sewing attachment feature for your table, you may really want to be thinking about getting that. So I love my wish table. The circle sewing attachment goes into the holes of the table, and this is what the circle sewing attachment looks like. So if you have holes in your table, they're out to the left of the needle. I'm going to show you that in just a second. But this circle sewing attachment can be purchased if you don't have one. So while we're talking about this, let me just take this right over here and we'll show you the table here. I've pulled the drawer out so you can see these holes in the table. Now they automatically come in the wish table and I believe maybe the deluxe table. But you can check with your local quilt shop and they can get that specifically ordered, because as I've talked to you about this before, this cutout is measured right for your machine. It's custom cut for your machine. So that's why I gave you a couple of weeks, so if you're interested in getting that before the Quilt-A-Long, you can go ahead and get that ordered. So what's the striped placemat and the circle napkin? Well, I don't have the circle napkin, but I do have the placemat ready. And so this placemat, it is going to teach you how to do some of the borders. Now some of them you can't see here. When I'm actually doing this on the Facebook Live, I will have plain fabric so you can see it. But we're going to be using our 12-inch arc. We're going to be using our 4-inch, the moon-shaped piece that some of you may never have used, that 4-inch. It looks like a moon. I don't know what else to call it. And then this, it doesn't show up as well here because I used variegated thread. But this is your Spinifex 4 used to make a border. In this one I've done the circles, and we'll teach you how to do those little embellishments in the circles. This one is your scallop or your clamshell template. And then I'm going to show you how to do cross hatching if you've never done cross hatching. And this, of course, is 2 templates put together, your spinning wheels 36, your Spinifex 4. We will do that on an extra piece of fabric, and then we will use the circle sewing tool to not only get this a perfect circle, but to also get a perfect circle with a decorative stitch. So as you can see on this, we've also used that finishing of using the Quick Easy Miter binding tool. This is strip pieced. But instead of using batting, I used fusible fleece. We're going to have the handout ready for you for the supplies so that you're ready to go with that. And then we will also be making a circular napkin. So that's one. And then we are also doing a Quilt-A-Long on Wednesday, October 10th, 17th, and 24th. And I am super excited about this one because it's quick gifts. And you are going to have at least 5, maybe 6, if we can work them in the time, quick gifts that you'll be able to either use for bazaars or giving to teachers, the different things that you can do with them, family, friends, quilting friends. You're just going to have a lot of fun with the variety of gifts that we're going to make in that. So this Quilt-A-Long is going to be on October 10th, 17th, and 24th. And they will probably all be at 4 o'clock, but stay tuned so that we can give you the exact details on that. And we're excited about this. It's been a lot of fun. Like I said, I missed having you guys last week. We're still obviously dealing with some things with our internet connection, and I do apologize for that. But we're going to go on. We're going to trudge through that, and I really want you to keep with me. And you will be able to find the instructions for this on Sew Steady's site. The blog should be up soon. And remember, if you're not connected with Sew Steady's blog, that's something that's new. That's going to be a lot of fun. And also the Westerly by Me Facebook page where you can share your projects. So I want to check one more time for any questions.
Are there instructions for a beginner?
Instructions for a beginner. I would encourage you, if you're a beginner, to go back and watch the first Quilt-A-Long, because there's going to be a lot of information in there that you can pick up. We try to share as much as we can. each time, but we don't want to have to repeat everything. The next one with the placemat is going to be sampler set 1. This is done with sampler set 1, and so you're definitely going to be able to learn a lot there.
Is your quick, easy miter binding tool only on your website, or where can they find that tool?
No, it's sold in a lot of different places. So contact your local quilt store and ask them, because I would encourage you to encourage them to go ahead and connect with me so that they can carry them in their store. Because again, I used to own a quilt store, and now I just have an online store, but I know what it means to be the local quilt store, and I want you to go to them and encourage them, share with them what's going on, so maybe they will be watching some of these Facebook Lives also.
There's a question. The next Wednesday in August is the 29th. So is that on a Wednesday, or should that be August 29th?
Well, maybe I did make a mistake on that. Since I'm using my phone to video, I can't really check that. So it is a Wednesday, and I'm fairly certain it's September 5th, so whatever the Wednesday is before that. So maybe I made a mistake on that. Any other questions?
What are the recommended crystals to use?
The ones that I have used are that you can get them from a lot of different places, but these were from Pink Sand Beach. I've had them quite a long time, but this one happens to be the size 4 millimeter. You can use larger ones. And again, your local quilt store may have them. You can check around with that. You can use, like I said, you could use a variety, smaller, larger, a lot of different brands out there.
We do want to confirm the next Wednesday is the 29th.
Okay, thank you.
One last question. Previously you had asked, or you had talked about thread weight. What type of thread weight do you recommend?
Well, for doing the quilting, I actually use 40 or 50 weight thread. Now you can use other threads depending on what look you're wanting. This on here was a 40 weight thread, so I have a little bit larger thread, and you just want to make sure that you're using a compatible size needle. I use an all-purpose thread for construction, and so when we did this and put this together, I was using a 40 weight all-purpose thread. So this is a strip piecing method, so when we do this, we will be having layers here, but none of this will be stitched through a second time, so that's not going to create an issue.
One last question. Where can they find the crystal tool?
The one that I use is from Candy, I believe. Yes, it's called Candy's Professional Touch. There are several different brands out there, and if you can't locate this, I would just say probably the next best thing would be a Google search to see where that you can get that. So if you have trouble getting it, give me a shout, send me an email, let me know. My email is on my website. You can just connect right there, and I'll see if I can get some of those to have for you. We also want to thank our sponsors, June Taylor, Westerly Designs, So Steady, So Biz, and Arrow. And since I just mentioned So Biz, I will say the liking and the sharing and your comments will get you entered to win one of the tools. And we may go ahead and give 2 or 3 of those away. So share, like, make comments. Even if you're watching this in the next week as a video and not live with us, you can still get in on the prizes and the drawings. So if you will share, comment, like, you will get in with the drawings for this quick, easy miter binding tool. Now down the road, I will show you that I also have this tool available for when you're doing something that's not a right angle. So you know you've got those projects that have 6 sides and or 8 sides. And I will show you how we have a tool that you can do the same type of mitering that we did on this very corner. So again, I am sorry, I guess I had the wrong date. The next one is August 29th. So one last check for questions. Well, like I said, I really missed being with you guys last week, and it's going to be hard to wait another 2 weeks to get started, but we'll get ready. We'll get the supply sheets ready for you, and look forward to seeing you again. And again, thanks to our sponsors, June Taylor, So Steady, So Biz, and Arrow. Bye for now. Do we have